Comics Throwback Cinema Review. Vengeance with another Throwback Cinema Review. I'm your friendly neighborhood role film geek Albert Valentin, and today we are reviewing the 1976 film Cannonball, directed by Paul Bartel and distributed by New World Pictures. This is a story of a car race from LA to New York that gets pretty wild and violent and sometimes comedic. And of course, this was a full 5 years before the Cannonball Run, which was more of a comedic car race. But anyway, the film stars David Carradine, Bill McKinney, Veronica Hamill, Jarrett Graham, and Robert Carradine, as well as Paul Bartel, Mary Wardoff, and some cameos from some future directors and some dude named Sylvester Stallone. But anyway, so where'd the film come from? The name of the film? Well, it's based on Irwin G. Cannonball Baker, who traveled across the United States several times, that so much that Brock Yates, who would go on to write Cannonball Run, created the Cannonball Baker Sea to Shining Sea Memorial Trophy Dash from one side of the country to the other in order to protest the 55-mile-an-hour speed limit. Well, that didn't quite happen. But anyway, we're going to get into the film, and you'll see why this is absolutely crazy. Anyway, it's set in the Trans-America Grand Prix. It's an illegal race held between Los Angeles and New York. Coy Cannonball Buckman, played by David Carradine, is one of the top racers in the country, but he just served time for accidentally killing a young woman while drunk driving, and he's still on probation. But he finds out that there's a company called Modern Motors, and they're offering either him or his arch nemesis, Cade Redmond, played by Bill McKinney, a contract. Whoever gets there first. So what happens is that Cannonball is up for the challenge, and despite the fact that he's still on probation, is not allowed to technically travel state lines. His parole officer, Linda Maxwell, played by Veronica Hamill, who just also happens to be his girlfriend, tries to stop him, but ultimately she joins him on the ride, along with Zippo, his mechanic, played by Archie Hahn. And as for Redmond, he's joined by country singer Perman Waters, played by Jarrett Graham, and his manager, and they drive in a Dodge Charger while Cannonball goes in his Trans Am. But there's other competitors in this race who are up for the challenge as well, and it's not for the prize of the contract, it's more for the money, because there's a big prize offer. And they include Jim and Marianne, a surfing couple from California, played by Robert Carradine, and I can't remember who played Marianne off the top of my head. But then you have a rich man named Terry McMillan, who's in a Chevy Blazer. We have three waitresses who want to start a new life, and so to do that, they soup up their van. And the leader of the group, Sandy, is played by the awesome Mary Wardoff, who at the time was married to Paul Bartel. And what happens is there's a little twist to the story. You see, in order for Cannonball to get his contract, his older brother, Benny, who was a gambling addict and played by the legendary Dick Miller, has bet with the Italian mob. And the leader himself is played by Paul Bartel, the director and co-writer. And of course, you know where this is going to go. And there's other racers, including a guy named Butel, who was hired by a rich couple to drive their Lincoln Continental to New York, so they can fly out there and drive through New York in this car. So they tell him, don't break the speed limit and don't wreck the car. You see where I'm going with this. And then you have a West German driver. Now you can say German, but back then, still East Germany and West Germany. You have a West German driver named Rolf Messer, played by James Keach, who drives a Damaso Pantera. So yeah, it's a pretty wild race, and it's going to be a wild race because you're going to see a lot of flying down the roads. You're going to see cops chasing them. You're going to see some car crashes, some crazy car stunts in the film. But yeah, that's what pretty much the movie's about. It's pretty much a car race that goes... It's pretty much like if you've seen Cannonball Run, you kind of would know what to expect in this. But this is more darker and more serious than Cannonball Run, where Cannonball Run is mostly, a whole thing of comedic antics that happen. Cannonball itself is more has some comic bits in it, such as, for instance, Paul Bartel is singing a song while his boys beat up Benny in one scene, which I thought was pretty funny. And there are some scenes where Jim and Marianne trick a cop into helping them start a car that they were trying to break in to grab a part that they needed for their car. It was a pretty funny scene. But mostly it does get really dark, especially with some car crashes and a pileup that happens kind of over midway through the film, almost like the start of the third act. There's this massive pileup, and sadly it leads to the death of an important character. And in the meantime, though, I think there's like 20 cars, and they don't even just try to evade it at one point. At one point, you just see them just going into it like, yeah, we don't care, let's just crash the damn cars. So yeah, that's what I'm talking about here. But I think I really enjoyed this film. I really think it was a fun little adventure. It was made in 1976. It was released in July 1976, and it's not a bad movie. It's not exactly like an Oscar-worthy film, but who cares? I'm not really an Oscar-worthy films at this point. I'm more into just having fun. This is a popcorn flick. That's why I want to watch this. I wanted to watch this. I saw this on New Year's Eve, and I just want to. Just a fun little film to watch, and I came across Cannonball on Tubi. So that's where you see the film. You see it on Tubi. You probably see it on Amazon Prime. You probably see it on YouTube. But overall, it's a great film, but there's some crazy stunts in the film. Matter of fact, I think one scene in particular where Cannonball goes off an incomplete bridge and jumps it. It might have inspired the likes of Smokey and the Bandit, and even the Blues Brothers famous chase scene, if you remember the particular scene. And then, so I'll give you a little bit of trivia before I give my final rating on the film. There are a lot of cameos in this film, and one in particular involves Sylvester Stallone as a mafioso, and he's sitting there with a bucket of Kentucky Fried Chicken with Paul Bartel and another mafioso played by Martin Scorsese. They're actually in this scene together, and it's pretty crazy. And the film's co-writer, Don Simpson, he would go on to form Simpson Bruckheimer Films with Jerry Bruckheimer, and they made such hit films, including a racing film, Days of Thunder, believe it or not. So there's that whole connection there with this film. But as for cameos, I mentioned Martin Scorsese, but you also have the likes of Roger Corman himself as a district attorney, and he's one of the producers on the film. Joe Dante's in the film. Jonathan Kaplan is in the film, and Alan Arkish are in the film. So yeah, they did that. It's a pretty wild movie. But unfortunately, when it came out in 1976, it didn't do too well. Another film that had David Carradine and Stallone. It's called Death Race 2000. It did a little bit better, but both films were from Roger Corman's New World Pictures. But and the cinematography was done by Tak Fujimoto, who would go on to like some pretty big films in the 80s, including one of my all-time favorites, The Breakfast Club. And so yeah, there's that. So what did I think of Cannonball? As a fun popcorn flick, if you don't take it too seriously, you know what you're in for. I'm going to give this a B for a rating. Cannonball will get a B for this. It's a lot of fun. Like I said, there's some comic books in it, but it does get dark as the film progresses. Overall, a pretty good movie. So if you want to check it out, like I said, check it out on Tubi. It's a lot of fun. Anyway, that's it for this month's Throwback Cinema Review. If you like this video, and I am going to be doing this every month, so the next one will be on March 15th. You know what to do. Like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Next month, we're going to delve into the 1985 film, The New Kids. So until then, I am your friendly neighborhood world film geek, Albert Valentin. Stay awesome, and we'll see you soon.